Hello and welcome back. This is an old poem, and we're unpacking some deep stuff because it's an old poem, so it's some shit we've been dealing with for a while. It doesn't have a title. It's not your fault, baby. These barbs stuck so deep inside. You put them there, my darling. You didn't know what else to do. You felt responsible. You always feel responsible. But hear me out, please. It's not your fault. You didn't have to have these wounds. Someone told you you were wrong. Someone told you you had to make up for it. Make up for being you. So you feel responsible. You always feel responsible for all of it. You carry it, all of it. All the pain you feel, all the pain you've ever felt. You feel responsible. You did make this, my darling. You believed what they said, because what else did you know? You held on to what they said so tightly, your soft hands torn up with it. Please let it go. It's not your fault. Everything isn't your fault. Please stop apologizing. Yeah. Going back to the childhood self, releasing all of the stories we devoted ourselves to all of the narratives that we created because we didn't know better, and don't work because now it's been 20 years, probably 15. God, I hadn't even realized how long I've been processing this, or I guess sort of talking about it, the stories that we create for ourselves in childhood based on small but monumental interactions that then become character defining moments for us, which feels like what this poem is about. I'm just like holding her face and, crying. The sweet little baby. I'm back where I grew up, in the same region that I grew up in. I drove today past the summer camp I went to as a child and that I worked at as a young adult. That was really life-shaping, self-shaping for me. It was really important to me. And I drove by there today for the first time, probably since I went, which was 2018. That was the last time I worked. And coming home always, I wonder if it's like this for everyone, it always feels complicated. Well, I guess not coming home, this isn't. Well, this still feels like home. It's where we grew up. And I loved it so much. I really wanted to make the camp thing my whole life. And then I was thinking about, I saw someone say once, it had to end that way or else you would still be in it. It had to end that way or else you would still be in it. And I think they were talking about a breakup of a relationship, but it made me think about things with camp and where I grew up, because it was so important to me. It was my whole life. It was a huge part of my identity. And then losing it, leaving it, well, that was when I cut all my hair off. I had to break up with myself, break up with the past version of myself. It was crushing. It had to end that way or else you would still be in it. It had to be dreadfully painful, fraught with overthinking and depression and guilt and shame. Shame. And I had to experience that, it seems, to come out the other side and be who I am now. And it's funny now being back when this new chapter is also ending, leaving Lindblad. Well, it's not a new chapter anymore, but when the thing that has become now such a huge part of my life and something I really enjoyed doing, but I never felt like it was going to be forever like I did with camp. And now I don't. The boats aren't an option anymore because I failed my drug test. Because I smoke weed. I felt that was going to happen at some point in time. That I would fail a drug test. It was just a matter of time. And I would have to do this whole long program to go back. I don't even know how long the program is, but that I'd have to do anything. I'm like, okay. It was time to go anyways. I knew that. And it also now makes sense why I've been feeling so poorly again these past 2 weeks. The grief that comes with any change. And now again, such a big one. So I went to the summer camp for 8 years as a camper and then worked there for 5. So it was most of my child self was involved in that place. Child to adolescence to young adult. The whole spectrum. And then I dated one of the other counselors, this girl from Australia, and then all of the campers started talking about it, and because it's in Texas, conservative, they have to appeal to the most conservative client, and so I wasn't allowed to come back, and that was really hard. Like, it was the thing that I wanted to, like, be my life. Like, that was what I was most invested in. That was what I, wanted the rest of my life to look like, was working at that camp in whatever fashion. Although I did realize in the last year that I didn't want to be a staff member, or at least I didn't feel like I had wanted to be one yet. Like, I was finding more ways I didn't fit, and obviously I didn't end up fitting in a big way. And that's kind of been the same process of what's been happening with the cruise company that I was working for, Lindblad. And actually, really similar timelines of how long it took. Like, in 2023 was when I was first really thinking about, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, just something, I had a really bad contract. I was like, is this not for me? Is this not what I thought it would be? And then I switched which boats I was working on, and I was like, okay. And then I got another 2 years, 1 year. Wow. No contracts this year. Oh, that's so crazy. 2025, no contracts. Yeah, I got another year and a half, really, out of changing something. And it's similar to the camp timeline, because I remember after I studied abroad, I felt weird. Or no, I started seeing the the counselor came back for 2 summers, and I started seeing her in 2017, and then 2018 was my last year. Because that was by the time that people started talking about it, you get another year. It's a pretty quick turnaround time, also, I would say, for noticing something that's not fitting anymore and needing to make a change. I'm curious because I was thinking about your first heartbreak, because it feels like leaving camp was my first heartbreak, but that was also tied up in another heartbreak of a romantic style. And I was thinking about the two, kind of comparing them in my head. Which one is more heartbreaking? You're leaving your childhood home or where you grew up, or your first romantic heartbreak. And it feels like both of those are kind of when you leave childhood behind. And so I'm curious if more people have that overlap of your first heartbreak in a romantic sense, also being tied in with kind of breaking out of your childhood home and the location. Like, I wonder if, well, it makes sense if you're having a heartbreak in one place. Well, change is heartbreaking, and maybe this is the overlap of it all, but change is heartbreaking, and so if you're experiencing change in one part of your life, it will affect other parts of your life, inevitably. That's just how it works. And so it's like change happens wider than we understand. Like from the smallest of minuscule changes, a waterfall of change could happen from the smallest difference, and so quickly too. So this past weekend, where I grew up going to summer camp, so I went there for 8 years and then worked there for 4 or 5 more. And so 12 years of my life, even after my family moved from the area, was still spent there. It always confused me when I was in college of how to say where I was from, because my family lived where they do now in Texas, but we grew up 3 hours away. But I kept going back with camp. But this past weekend, that was where the floods were in Texas. That was where the flash flood happened. 1 foot to 36. The water rose 35 feet in 30 seconds. Which I don't know how many meters that is. I'm sorry. That happened, and we were just there a few weeks ago to visit because my family goes once a year, and I haven't been able to join them for almost 10 years. And going back, it was really refreshing. I drove by my summer camp and I saw everything. Everyone was napping. It was rest hours, so I didn't see anyone, but I saw the place, and I hadn't seen it in probably at least 5 years, more than that. 2018. And what I've keep thinking with the flood and seeing all the photos is we were just there. I'd just seen this place. And it reminds me of when a person dies and people say I just saw them. They were just here. And I hadn't ever thought about how a natural disaster is a death of a place. And that place so encapsulated my childhood. It was really what shaped me in a lot of ways into who I am today. And now it's completely changed in 30 minutes. Well, now that's still days after. They're cleaning and finding bodies. And because I love finding symbolism and everything, I've thought about how this is my Saturn return year right now. And and I've read that your first Saturn return can be read or kind of seen as an end to your childhood, an end of your childhood. And I mean, the place that I grew up, the place that's so encapsulated my childhood, and the first breaking of it as well, because the first time I really had to figure out how to rebuild my life was when I couldn't go back to camp. is now changed forever, has now died. I keep thinking of this song. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. I don't. But the sudden return of it all. The end of your childhood. Also that, like, I've been home for this. Like, I got to go back. I wouldn't have gotten to go back if I had gone to the boat. If I had found a boat that was leaving earlier. If everything else had worked out the way that I wanted it to. And this has also made me think about how how place can really also reflect what's going on. Ooh, that's a good way to put it. In how, because the only other time I can think of seeing a place change so much, seeing a landscape change so much, was in Africa at the gathering, right at the shoreline. There was this lagoon that before I had arrived, I think to prepare for rainy season, the village had changed its course already so that it became a sort of delta, the lagoon water leading out into the ocean. And the village had moved the sand and dug, and everybody worked together. And then there was this little cove after the delta, but there were these large rocks. There were these large rocks that came out from the other side of the beach that created a cove after the delta before the ocean. And the waves were really crazy, so you needed to find somewhere where they would break easier, not break on you, because there was whirlpools in the other area. And that place, that cove, looked entirely different when we left. It had a gentle slope of the sand, and by the end of it, at the beginning and by the end of it, there was just the grass and then it cut off. And there were so many more rocks. And it's crazy how if you start paying attention to the symbolism of things and paying attention to your environment and just noticing what's going on, you can start to see the conversation between what's happening energetically and what's happening physically in your reality. I feel like this is another way that life is a mirror. We can see the change that's maybe happening within us or in our relationships reflected in the landscape around us, in the weather around us. I don't know why that's important, but it makes me feel better. This also is making me think about how I just saw I don't even remember where this came from. Rivers change direction, change course most often in a season of growth. In a time of growth is when a river changes direction. And this flash flood, why it was also so devastating, was because this side of the river, the Guadalupe, this was, I guess, more of a tributary, or the Guadalupe split, the Guadalupe River. And this was the low side. This was not the side that got flooding. This was the smaller side. And so nobody was really in the floodplain. There were houses right on the river almost. A season of growth. And also how all of the other outer planets, planets past Saturn, it goes Jupiter, Saturn, I think. Planets past Saturn, when they change, because they stay in one place for so long, they stay in one sign for so long, it really makes big changes energetically, and a lot of that's been happening right now. If anybody Couldn't feel that in the air. Couldn't see that on the news.
I feel like also thinking about unprocessed anger and like generational trauma and how my half of my self existed in my grandmother because you're born with all of your eggs, and so whatever. And so when my mom was conceived and growing inside of my nana, my mom had all of her eggs. And so also, I don't know if I've already mentioned this, but they've done tests on mice, on lab rats. So on one generation of mice, they played a sound and the mice got shocked, like with electricity. And then the next generation, they played the sound and the mice reacted like they got shocked. But they didn't, like the electricity didn't come through. And so it took 3 generations for that reaction to go away. And I know that my nana was abused. Her father was abusive, and she wasn't nice to my mom. My mom was the least favorite child out of all of her sisters, and so that lives in my genetics. And so it makes sense why I'm terrified of anger, terrified of feeling it, terrified of expressing it, terrified of seeing it. Because, in my genetics, I would imagine it's never been expressed healthily. And so it's all been backed up for generations with fear.
And I remember moments from my childhood where I could see that it wasn't acceptable to express anger, or I never saw a way that it was healthy and functional to express anger. And so the only thing you can control is yourself, and when you're a child, you'll really take that to an extreme. And so then the only place I could safely express my anger was at myself. Like, I remember when I was a teenager once, I was really upset about something. I can't remember what, but just like a deep, dark, heavy feeling. And I was hiding in my closet. And I remember my mom and I were fighting about something, and she left the room, and I started punching the wall of the closet, and my brothers had already punched so many holes in the walls of the house in general, so she could hear me, obviously, and she was like, "Don't you punch a hole in my wall." I don't think I was even, actually I was in powerlifting, I was probably strong enough, but then I just started punching my face. She didn't know, of course. How could she? When I wouldn't tell anyone any of my emotions. You feel lost and confused. People can't know where you're at if you don't tell them. You feel lost and alone. People can't know where you're at unless you tell them.
But anger, I believed for a really long time, anger is a secondary emotion or an indicator emotion, as Brene Brown says. She's a sociologist, emotions researcher, brilliant woman doing so much for the world, truly. And she also believed that anger was an indicator emotion. But all of her research that she did for her most recent book, I think, I don't live in society really, so I'm not sure if she's released another one. But it's called Atlas of the Heart, and it's really like a map for understanding our emotions. And she said that anger in their research was not actually an indicator emotion. It's an independent emotion. And I don't remember if she said this or someone else, but it tells you when your boundaries have been crossed. It tells you when something isn't right, like when you've been hurt or you've experienced or seen injustice. And it is like one of my friends just said this. I was asking her if she knows how she processes her anger. And if you don't process it, it's like a cancer. Like it just grows and builds and seeps into other places. And I feel like where I'm noticing where my original anger is coming from, I remember in kindergarten, preschool I think was fine, but in kindergarten I was teased for being fat and farting, and then I just internalized that something was wrong with me.
I internalized that something was wrong with me, and now it feels like part of this anger that's coming up that feels old, and well, it feels like it's from a long time ago, but it also feels very young. It's like my small self being like, there was nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with you in the first place. My voice can't go high right now, so it's gotta go deep. There was nothing wrong with you. That's me at 7 years old.
And like I remember also when I was very young, I don't remember how old, but it would have had to have been elementary school, young primary school, so like less than 10. There was this boy at church who I think I had the inklings of a crush on, probably just thought he was cool, but he was older, and I was still of the age where like I thought I could hug everybody. And so I hugged him like from behind, but he was older than me, so like had my face in his butt and my arms around his waist, so like probably touching his penis. I don't remember. But I remember my dad pulled me aside, like pulled me off of him. It was like a quick hug, but I got reprimanded. It felt like severely. And it was like, oh, okay, I can't do that. Like I did something wrong. My natural instinct is wrong.
And also, obviously, this is all of this reasoning that I'm working through, all of this pattern, all of these patterns that I'm working through were created when I was very young and didn't understand things as clearly as I do now. And when you're small, you understand, as it is still now, or like, is it always true, that the only thing you can control is yourself. But then I feel like when you're young, you think of it as a way of like, if I can just control myself enough, then I'll be able to control the situation. If I can just control myself enough, then I won't be in any danger. Which is still kind of true, but that doesn't apply to like emotional danger. That doesn't work the same way if you're trying to protect from emotional danger. Like, you can't control yourself enough to control the situation. The only thing you can control is the situation. Because when you're trying to control yourself enough to control the situation, it's like you think it's your fault. And that's just not true. Life is a mirror, and it's your responsibility to determine what you want to see in that mirror, but it's not your fault.
And this reminds me of the Duggar family, the documentary Shiny Happy Family on Amazon Prime, that they would do the blanket training. I know I've already talked about this, which is blanket training, is when a baby is put on a blanket on the ground, spread out blanket, and a toy that they want is placed just out of their reach off of the blanket. And the mom says, you can't play with the toy until I say you can. As soon as the baby starts going off of the blanket, they hit the baby in the back of the legs with a switch, with a whip. That process just teaches you that your desire is dangerous, that if you reach outside of the known, if you reach outside of what your parents desire, what the overarching authorities desire, then you'll be punished. And in that effect, it feels like when you're punished, it feels like something's wrong with you. And when you teach someone that from such a young age, then they won't have a sense of self. Then they might hate themselves. Then they might be terrified to be themselves. I just pulled out my phone to take a picture, and it's 22:22. I didn't experience that in my household growing up, but I was rejected by my peers. And then I think when I started coping with that by eating at home, eating more, then I started being rejected at home. It obviously upset my mom when I would want to eat, but outside of meals, when I would want a snack. And so then I took that to mean that something was wrong with me. And I've held on to that the whole time. If I do something that upsets someone else, it's wrong. I'm wrong. And obviously I don't want to go around upsetting everybody, but I can't stomach this any longer. I can't squash this down anymore. It's not good for my system. I don't want to keep smoking cigarettes.
I feel like that one has been spoken about, but now we need to live the realization, which is gonna be a lot harder. It is so heavy having needs when I've been able to convince myself I don't have them for the past few years, while also having a great time. It's easier to have a great time when you don't have needs. Well, no, maybe that's also just a thing. That sounds like a rule that I'm making up that actually doesn't need to apply. Yeah. But this is a 2-part episode. I was editing these two together, and the episode would have been like an hour and a half long, which was way too long for my idea of what I'm doing here. And so they go together. There's so much overlap, but also there's so much overlap regardless, because this is about my life. And I can only be one person. Yeah, so part 2 will be coming. I hope you're still enjoying listening. I'm enjoying talking about this and, yeah, feeling my feelings, figuring them out. I think more accurately, still need to work on the feeling part. But we're doing that now. We haven't for a few years. Yeah, I hope the end of the summer birthed you into a place beautiful. The new beginning of the new year. Autumn always feels like more of a new year than the dead of winter. That doesn't make sense. New year, new goals, new lessons. We just got out of the birth canal, guys. Are you gasping for air yet? Much love.